Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Thursday in the Hub. And today I'm really excited because I love phonology, I love pronunciation, and we're joined today by Olga Prepodobnaya, and she's going to be chatting to us about mouth fitness. Olga is, she's an income teacher. She's based in Italy, and she's just passionate about ELT, as so many people in the Hub are. She's really interested in all sorts of the nuts and bolts of the English language, whether it's phonology, lexis, grammar, everything. And so she's coming along today to focus on phonology, lots and lots of practical ideas coming up, and also some of the theory underlying it all. Okay, so thank you very much, Olga, for coming along to join us today.
Thank you for having me, Teresa. It's a very big pleasure over here. So I'm very, very excited. So good morning, everybody. Dear Hubbers, I would like just to share some of my ideas, hopefully practical, for your pronunciation activities in your business, ESP, and also work-related classes. So today we're going to talk a little bit about why teaching pronunciation to adult professionals. That's always a good question. What are my students' pronunciation issues, and what are your students' pronunciation issues? Because once you understand what your students are really struggling with, there is the way to help. There is a solution. And one more question that I keep asking myself, and probably this is how I come up with most of my ideas: how can I boost their motivation practicing segments and super segments? So today we're going to look into a few things. I know that pronunciation phonology is a very huge deal, is a very huge thing. We have so many things to do and so many things to talk about as educators, but we're focusing on just a very tiny little thing today. And I just hope that maybe these ideas might be practical, and maybe these ideas will actually help you to create something on your own, thinking about your own students and thinking about your learning environment. So my first question to you is, Teresa, also question. This is a question for you. Does anyone this morning start with this routine?
I don't. I tend to get up and go for a walk. And I think I'd look a bit strange if I was walking along the street, kind of prodding bits of my face.
Yeah, right. So right now, the fitness is viral. I mean, it used to be, just, you visit a gym, you attend some, I don't know, you take up some sports, you attend some yoga classes. But with the time right now, we're actually able to do so many things right now, not just only with our bodies, but also with our face. Right now, there is a lot of face yoga, face fitness, all these things. And also you can work with your voice. That's why we have voice coaches and intonation coaches, accent coaches, etc., etc. So I was thinking that fitness, and the name of this session is called Mouth Fitness, is that why not making some sort of a gym practice with your mouth, right? Why calling it a pronunciation activity? Hello, let's work on your pronunciation. A lot of people, especially when we talk about adults, they're like, again, we're gonna have this, repeat after me. And I just wanted to think about something that would be light, fun, and also engaging, and also maybe in the context of personalizing a little bit. I have a lot of students who would be, I don't know, really big joggers, or people who go to the gym regularly. And so when they hear the word fitness, their mind suddenly becomes a little bit relaxed. So you can see their face a little bit more relaxed with their jawline down. So so just imagine the context that I'm working with. I am an in-company teacher, and quite often I work for different plants and factories in big companies. In Italy, these companies are mostly related to engineering, electrical engineering, energy, etc., etc. So just imagine that if I have to teach a face-to-face class with one student who happens to be a director of this big, amazing, great plant, and who is so advanced that he can teach you things, but who has this little tiny problem with, pronouncing some sounds, or maybe getting the wrong lilt, etc., etc. So I feel like I can't really come to the class and ask this big person to have this practice with tongue twister, something like Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers, which is fantastic, and it's very workable. And I love tongue twisters because they're very quick, they're on spot, and they actually help you work on your pronunciation. But I would just not psychologically be ready to do this kind of activity and explain how important it is to do it to, let's say, top management people. So my question is to you guys, and Teresa, also to you. Oopsie. How many of your adult students will feel engaged doing Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers? And moreover, how many of you will feel comfortable teaching that?
I think you're definitely right. Like, so much depends on our students' engagement and motivation to get involved in activities. I think it's sometimes the same with games. Like adult students, they kind of go, oh, I'm not here to just play games. And then you explain the rationale behind things. And that can definitely help. But yeah, I think I would definitely feel reticent if it was some kind of higher ranking person within the company and he or she kind of said, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. And then they actually sometimes they do that, but then, when they have to kind of like report to a training manager or to the school, they would be like, I did a very funny activity. I don't know why I did that one. So I feel kind of intimidated about this because, sometimes you never know what kind of feedback you may get. So it's a good idea just to make clear in the class why we do that, what's the purpose, and how it's going to help them. So I started asking myself the question. So is there not any, pronunciation practice that I could do with this top guns, with these big people, that would be, relevant and on spot, and that would make them feel like, aha, now this is a business class. And I started Googling, and this is what I came up with. This is what I found. And I was like, my God, this is perfect. All I want is a proper cup of coffee. It's just perfect. It's amazing. Because first of all, this is one of the most difficult tongue twisters in the English language. And also here you may find so many different things, right? It's the different sounds, it's the lilt, it's prosody, it's word stress, it's rhythm, it's everything in this little tongue twister, this very magic tongue twister. Besides, what can be more relevant than coffee topic? I mean, you can just have a wonderful follow-up activity, asking them questions about the market, the prices, the I don't know, any kind of different coffee brands. And I feel like this kind of a pronunciation warmer can lead very nicely and neatly to your, activities related to vocabulary, or maybe you will set up a kind of a discussion, etc., etc. So fantastic. I really enjoy this proper cup of coffee. Teresa, have you ever used this one?
I don't think I've seen the whole thing before. I think I've seen all I want is a proper cup of coffee.
Yeah, exactly.
But not the next 3 lines.
Exactly, right? So not many people even are aware that there is a, kind of a continuation of all this fun. So yeah, so I thought, okay, this is just fantastic. This is great. And again, the big question is, why is it important for an adult to have a good pronunciation, or at least to try to soften his accent in L2? So here, I mean, not only English, but just in general, right? And since I'm working, since I run in-company courses, normally my reality is that I get from 40 to 60 hours. And normally these hours are nicely distributed in this, 40, 45 weeks. So I would get maybe 1 hour, at most 2 hours a week to work with the group or with the individual. which we may understand if we think about all the priorities and needs of our students. This time, well, just let's be honest, we don't have enough time to do this kind of very nice and neat practice on pronunciation. Even if we see that our students struggle and really need this little delicate push in, forward this pronunciation awareness. So why still doing that? Why finding time for this? It definitely improves their motivation. People feel that this is something really important and this is where they can progress. And let's just imagine that it may take, an Italian student may take for, well, several years to master present perfect. Sometimes it takes up from months to several years just to understand the principle of the grammar. But if you just help to understand a certain sound or the way how the words are stressed, he can make progress in no time. So definitely when you say, look, here is your progress. Look, you said this, but now you're saying this. It definitely improves their motivation. Boosts their confidence, because the better you speak and the better you make yourself understood, well, again, it's all about motivation and feeling confidence. You got this self-esteem growth. And surely, well, probably you would put this point as the first one, it increases the level of understanding, right? Both segmental and suprasegmental aspects. And the reason why I put this as the third point is just because I really wanted to, maybe highlight it a little bit. And I even put a question mark here, because when we talk about understanding, this word may be just too broad, too wide when it comes to pronunciation and learning pronunciation. So what happens here is that Larry Smith in 1992 actually said, look, understanding is too general. So when we teach English, it's too general. What kind of understanding do we really mean? So this is how he came up with three, let's just say, sub-concepts of one big concept of understanding. So he mentioned intelligibility, comprehensibility, and interpretability. So intelligibility, we've all been there. I mean, I'm pretty sure that all the teachers at some point learn new languages, or even when you travel. The first thing that you learn in Italian is not even ciao. The word is allora. So this is an interjection, which means well, or it's a very nice filler. So when you start the sentence, right? So you say allora, and you hear that all the time. Everywhere, whenever you are, you hear allora all the time. And then you're like, for some reason, you start asking yourself, what is allora, right? And this is the level of intelligibility. You start understanding separate words. And normally that's going to be interjections, or the words like yes, no, oh, ah, etc., etc. So this is the level of intelligibility. You understand separately taken words. Comprehensibility is something that my Italian husband is experiencing right now when I'm on the phone with my mom and we speak Russian. And sometimes he asks me, so normally I repeat the phrases like, what did you say? Can you hear me? I know, I don't know. And these phrases are on repeat, surely, because every time that there is this conversation and I use these phrases. So at some point he would come to me and say, what is this phrase? What does it mean? Right? So this is a comprehensibility. We think in expressions, we think in bigger chunks, if we may say so, right? So this is comprehensibility. Or maybe when you get into your level of the language is quite low, but you still, go somewhere, you travel. And I speak zero Spanish. I never studied it, but yo no sé, for some reason, I know. I don't know how I know it. I just know, right? So this is comprehensibility. Interpretability is more about listening. So how can a person who listens to you interpret your message? So when my Italian students say, I need eat, and sometimes by eat, they mean heat, and by heat, they mean heating, is it the same? So was the message delivered, right? Do you understand what the person wants? This is about interpretability. Adrian Underhill, who I personally admire very much, once said that actually the process of ear and mouth, so how we speak and how we listen, it is the same process. It's so-called ear-mouth grip. And it's very important to develop it. And when the teachers present different accents and when we do this pronunciation activity, when we listen and when we speak, this is where, this is how we increase our interpretability. What happened next? Tracy Derwing and Murray Monroe agreed with Larry Smith on intelligibility and comprehensibility. So they also said, no, look, understanding is too general, too broad. No, we're going to break it down. But instead of interpretability, they decided to focus on the concept which is called accentedness. So they actually made it clear that it's very important that the advanced speaker, who we may already find on the level of interpretability, together with comprehensibility, intelligibility, is that the person can understand different accents. So when the students who are, let's say, all over the world, so I have a few Russian and Ukrainian students who now live in Germany and Los Angeles and somewhere else, at some point they start to understand that, okay, this is an accent that they use in Los Angeles, and this one is Midwest, and this one is, you know, from Texas, and this one is German, and this one is Dutch, etc., etc. And this is where this accidentless as a concept comes in handy. So when the more we expose our students to different accents, the better they feel the language, the better they feel where they are, at which point, right?
That's really interesting. Just, I'm going to interrupt here. I've been observing some multilingual classes recently, quite a low level and A2-ish. And one of the students in there who's quite low in the class, she's a Spanish speaker. So obviously she's interacting with, there's someone from Pakistan who lives in Japan. There's a couple of Ukrainians, Russians, Finnish, Indian. And she was saying, I find it really difficult to understand people who aren't Spanish, Italian, French. She said, you know, European or the Romance language speakers, she was like, I can understand them. She knew she could understand their accents, perhaps their way of formulating phrases, but she was like, yeah, Finnish people and these other accents, I just can't understand them.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I also find it very interesting that, you know, since I have Russian, Ukrainian students and Italian ones, when, you know, the first class that you have, and you have this needs analysis, of course, so you have to, you know, kind of talk to the people, break the ice, and see what their needs, what their expectations. And it's very interesting that Russian Ukrainians would mostly say, I do need a person who would teach me American English in the meaning of pronunciation. So they would follow that way. Mm-hmm. And my Italians, and so they would say, oh, it's actually so difficult to understand British accent. And I was thinking that maybe it is because we are so much exposed to American culture, entertainment programs, food, anything, music, etc., etc. Whereas my Italian students told me, well, American accent is completely, absolutely something that we don't understand. I struggle with American accent. I was like, are you sure? Because, you know, there are some really particular sounds in British pronunciation that, you know, that should be taught, or maybe you kind of have to get used to them. They're like, no, British is just a walk in the park. I was like, what? Okay, well, but that was a very interesting observation, because there are just people who would just kind of split. And when I was in Canada for my TESOL program, I met people from Brazil and Mexico, and they completely they were not aware of what British English is, what British English pronunciation is, what is RP. because they were so much exposed to this general American pronunciation, right?
Mhm.
So it's very interesting how people, what kind of input they get, right? And it's insane, and that's why we have so much of different Englishes and so many different requests regarding the accent, etc., etc. So
I thought
yeah,
that was really
what an
interesting.
interesting.
Sorry, that was really interesting as well when you know, kind of some students come along and they're like, I want to speak with a British accent, or I want to speak with an American accent. And then, like you said, there's kind of Midwest accent, there's Los Angeles accent, there's all these different dialects and accents,
Exactly.
regions, and
Yeah,
Okay, I'll stop.
absolutely. No. It's actually very, very, great when you can just get into it with comments and different things. So it's lovely to have this interaction. So a question for everybody. There are I just put several word expressions. And my question is, do you think that any of your adult students, let's talk about adult students, who would struggle with pronouncing any of these phrases, expressions, words? Let's just take a look and quickly think if any of your students would mispronounce or would not know how to pronounce, would have any problem with that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for example, with year,
Uh-huh.
diphthong, yeah, and kind of a slightly longer vowel sound than a lot of Spanish speakers tend to use. That causes problems for them.
Yeah, so do they also say ear instead of year?
Ah, I haven't noticed that.
All of my students say ear.
Stephanie's in the chat. She posted a lovely comment earlier when you asked about feeling comfortable teaching the kind of the business English clients. She said, I wouldn't feel comfortable as I don't think the client would feel it had meaning for him, her. What they need to be able to say to get their message across is what I would work on, which is, yeah.
Great. Yes.
And she says now early she thinks would possibly be a problem.
Oh, early is a nightmare. It's quite difficult, especially, if you just think about it, like I would just say that I am regularly exposed to Russian, Ukrainian, Italian, and Japanese languages, not just in the meaning that I teach, students, I teach English to the students, but I'm a learner myself, which means that I kind of see their struggles. And one very important fact is that none of these phonological systems, I mean, Russian, Ukrainian, Japanese, and Italian, can somewhat coincide and correlate with an English one, which basically means that you actually have to reshape your mouth. You basically have to kind of review and re-see your muscles and how your mouth works. And I also have to add that at school, I know that for sure that in Russian, Ukrainian schools, as well as in Italian one, because I used to observe several classes, nobody actually teaches pronunciation or makes it look like, guys, be aware, okay? So most people would just go intuitively in some way and think, okay, I'm just gonna say ear, or I'm just gonna say sin. I'm just gonna try that myself. So, and sometimes it's workable, sometimes absolutely not, right? So it's just important to keep in mind, if your students, the speakers of other languages, how is this phonological system, does it match? Is there any discrepancy? Is there a gap? Because we usually see like saying, okay, and the, not in my language. So we have to teach that, right? But if you take a look a little bit like in a kind of a wider way and just, consider the whole phonological system, how many vowels, how many consonants, and you will definitely understand what's the person is struggling with. Because sometimes even when you say, like if you think about Jamaica, they don't say the, right? They say that going on. Less kind of comprehensible. It could be interpretable. Maybe this is not a perfect English. Maybe this is not the English for broadcasting, but still, right? I mean, it depends where you are, and again, what is the environment, just to make it clear. Also, in the sentence with deal with it, it especially goes with Russian, Ukrainian, and Italian speakers, in my case, when it's really hard to understand that there are some stressed and unstressed syllables. So the Italians would go, deal with it. And sometimes there is nothing wrong about the sounds, right? You still understand deal. They may get a very nice with, but why putting this in this way? So when you speak like this, it's a little bit heavy, right? It's you want to work on this a little bit. Or the minimal pairs v and w can be a big problem for Russian speakers because mostly they interchange this w, v, and it becomes very well or something like that, right? Yeah, one more round. Are there any words that would cause a problem? Attention, Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese speakers.
So this is vegetable is a typical problem for Spanish speakers, but there's a couple of British chefs. They're called the hairy bikers, and they say vegetables. So I think as well, this kind of idea of exposing our students to other Englishes, other dialects, other accents, and kind of saying, you know, we always say you should say vegetables, but there are British people who do say vegetables.
Wow.
Yeah, I never, and you know, typical teacher, you know, you're sitting down to watch a cookery show, you're like, oh, that's related to ELT.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, in my case, with Italians, that would be vegetables for sure. The table will be stressed, and also comfortable, and for some reason, this is where I find the issue, because when you stress table, you basically lose the veg and the comfort, and it doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about, tables? What's going on, right? So this is quite a big issue. Also, think for a moment. That's also could be a classy mistake over here. And we've got some recommend retail price rates, right? That could be a very big issue, especially for the business people, because they may use the word recommend and retail, which becomes retail sometimes. Still, well, understandable, but still. And the price rates, the R's in all the languages that I'm talking about today, they're all different, right? Because R in American English, let's say general American, is flat, and you do not have anything in your mouth but just this R sound, which goes flat. In Russian, you would do that, the trilling thing a little bit, and in Italian it's rolling, it's different. So this R could also cause a problem. So understanding what kind of a R you use is really important. Teresa, how about the Spanish language? How are the R's?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a bit of a rolling. I'm trying to think what specific words it might come up in, and I can't think on the spot. But it is definitely an issue, and as well with kind of the ending er.
Mm-hmm.
Tend not to do teacher.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. They do pronounce the R more than we might in a Southern British accent like mine.
Wow. Yeah. It's incredibly interesting how many different accents can get you into absolutely different pronunciation rules. But yeah, it's great. That's why I say it's great to when there is some kind of a rule, some kind of a system of the sounds from where you can see that and stick to it, and maybe then see some different deviations, etc., etc. So, all right. So I just picked some words that are common that my students struggle with, but there's also a little bit of business-like vocabulary that can create a problem. And again, there is a question for you. What do you think might be where there can be an interpretability problem, if any?
Yep. We've just had another message from Stephanie. Reduction of final clusters, as in board.
Exactly. Yeah.
Things like that, and obviously board member, talk to the board. Yep. So that would
absolutely.
With these, I mean, I can imagine kind of longer syllabled words causing problems for Spanish speakers. Expenditure and sound at the end there would definitely cause some issues. I think as well, like you were saying before, the kind of the awareness raising. So there are some generalizations. I don't want to say rules, but there are some generalizations. TURE, nature, future, expenditure. And perhaps if they're conscious, if they're noticing language, then when they see these new words, like you say, it will kind of click in and go, oh, I've seen other words with that ending. Possibly it might follow this same sort of rule.
Exactly, right. One of the most surprising common pronunciation mistakes for me was here, working with Italians, was that people shift the stress from management into management. And for some reason, for me, it was very strange because, even in Russian, we have the English word management. So nobody really, makes this mistake. But here, and I've been told, and please correct me if it's wrong, that management, to pronounce management, is actually taught at the universities. I was like, this is not possible. I don't think so. You can, use the dictionaries and look it up by yourself and see that it's management. And I think it's just a quick tip for people who might have this problem in their classes is just to tell people, look, you are the man of business. The stress is on man, management, manager, manage. You manage things because it all comes from manage. Man, it derives from the man. The only thing that is not stressed is a woman. So it makes it all different. And that somehow works. So people, keep thinking, because, business people, they actually like to kind of have this little focus on something and, okay, yes, we're here. Let's keep it that way. So, but this is definitely a problem in the class. And also the word complaint. And here I find a little bit of a more problem because sometimes it is pronounced as compliant. And compliant is a different word. It's completely different thing. And this is where we have this interpretability issue. And I think whatever focus you have on your class, if you got that problem, you stop everything and you just say, look, it's complaint. Because many people deal with customer service, right? So they deal with complaints, and sometimes we all have to complain at some point, not being satisfied with services or something. So this is an issue. And also, it was very interesting, because when you have some in-company students who, who are amazing negotiators, and you can see that they are doing so much, they are doing so well in English, holding negotiations, closing the deals, and like, oh my God, what can I teach these people? And I almost feel elated when, there are some people who are not aware of the shift of the stress depending on the part of the speech. So if we say increase and access and access, right? And they say, oh, this is very interesting. I didn't know that. I was like, yes, great. We're learning something, right? So this is also a common problem here.
And Stephanie's just mentioned as well, those stress shifts. So when it's administrative, and kind of typical language that the students might need in business, I said as well, kind of economics, economist. when you've got these words with the same root and then the stress does change, that can be very frustrating.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And also, I don't know about Spanish speakers, but it's rapid here. It's rapid. And for some reason, you almost start hearing the word, what, rapping? Somebody rapped? What's going on, right? So I keep thinking about the word la porta. So this is, port is important. So it's port, deport, report. And, but it's hard because there are so many words in Italian that have this shift where port is not the main, is not the root, let's say. So that's why they get confused a little bit. But also, for some reason, we don't have any similar word in the Russian or Ukrainian language, and people still say rapper. So that was interesting, that without any kind of a reliance of, Russian speakers do not rely on any of this. They just go rapper, just because it's more comfortable, rapper, for some reason. So, yeah, okay. So since I work with business people, they got me into thinking that, okay, maybe I could just create something that could be, very practical, very useful, based on the problems of my students. Because of course there is a very big range what you want to work on. But if you have 40 or 50 hours of a course, and in the course the needs analysis is improve your pronunciation, I need to start from something. So in order to kick off, I was just thinking, I quite often use, and also business people are very much familiar with SWOT analysis, where you could analyze strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats when you think about decision-making, when you, I don't know, just weigh up all pros and cons, et cetera, et cetera. And I've been thinking of looking into the problems, pronunciation problems of my students from the point of view of SWOT. And this is what I actually came up with. So I decided to create SWOT, pronunciation error analysis. And I was very surprised to get to know that actually it's pretty much applicable to all of my students. So Russian, Ukrainians, Japanese, and Italians. Syllable added. So this S would stand for syllable added. And this is a very common mistake for Italians and Japanese, who would say makudonaritsu, just because in Japanese it's the syllabic language, right? So for them it's really, really hard not to put consonant, just putting just one little consonant. W would stand for two things: word stress, report, management, and the minimal pair of w and v that I mentioned before. So that would be my W thing, my weakness, but word stress and the minimal pair. The O happened to be quite a big problem because, for example, in Russian there are no diphthongs. So when you see the word go, you would just naturally go and say go. And I noticed that Italians do the same because there is no this very nice diphthong. So the O problem is there. O, opportunities. And schwa, that we mentioned before, that people do not actually recognize the schwa sound just because there is no schwa in Russian, Ukrainian, Japanese, Italian. So that also, for some reason, it became a problem for my Italian students because they would say signature. They would just go with a little bit of French influence. They would just go that way. And I was thinking, maybe I could try to correct that. But how? And this is what I came up with. So I decided, since I have a very little time for for practicing pronunciation and doing an activity like, read the text and, put the stress, look into the prosody, look into this separate sounds, make them repeat after me. I just thought I need something practical and also personalized. And since I have just 1 minute, and I was thinking like, okay, I have to think as a business person and as a personal trainer. So when the person gets into the gym, he just says, I want my arms be bigger. So you would, work not on the whole core, but you would just work on the arms. So I came up with, I wouldn't call them really tongue twisters, but it's just something that, you know, I hope is fun, and at the same time it's kind of, you know, good for working on particular sound. So first, since, well, ks is a quite popular sound that, you know, causes problems for both Italians and Japanese, because they tend to say kusu, kusu. And again, sometimes they not be an issue, but if there is a Japanese business person who presents the figures in front of the European people, or, you know, American people in the United States, it somehow ruins the impression, if not to say more. So I just came up with this two little sort of tongue twisters where we're focusing on the sound ks. And for Italians, it's an extra challenge because they have to put success. So they have to say ks just in the middle of the word. And then it's tricky not to go into successful, because this is what can finally come out. So we're thinking about one ks at a time and trying to work on this using the word accept, successful, success. And for business people, they use quite a lot of different collocations and this word of success. Also accept, right? Could be another example. And then again, the word stress, the word shift, is it to access success, or is it access to success? That's the question, right? So yeah, I would go with these two, or maybe even, you know, I'm pretty sure that there are more creative people in here than I am who would, you know, come up with just a better list, or maybe a list that would be more applicable for their speakers, for their learners. So this is just an example. So another one here, I used a little bit different approach, a little bit different technique. So the first one, for w and v, I would just go with, again, a kind of a tongue twister that makes little to no sense, but still, when Valeria verifies vouchers in Verona, we will withdraw Venezuelan bolivars. Very well. Right. And here I also put just a little bit of business related vocabulary, like verify and vouchers and withdraw. Many people, especially Italian business people, they don't know the word withdraw because it's they use completely different verb in Italian. So it's just also a kind of a vocabulary awareness. And after this, I can, you know, kind of follow up with an activity of like, okay, how often do you withdraw? And do you like to, you know, pay by credit card, or do you enjoy using cash? So that would be a kind of a conversation after, right? Another technique, so since Russians and Ukrainians normally have more problems with the v and w, I decided to go for a different activity. So we need to imagine that we are not the native speakers of Russian or Ukrainian, but we're just tourists who are trying to learn Russian or Ukrainian. That's why I would give them a kind of tongue twister or a phrase with a lot of v's and w's sounds, and they would attempt to pronounce, so to say this tongue twisters with a kind of English-like accent. So they would say, so the idea is not to say Varona pravoronila voronenia, but to say Verona pravoronila voronena. And ideally, that would kind of give them the idea of this, a little bit of a contrast and comparison, where they can compare and contrast and see that there is a difference in these sounds. And these materials are kind of materials that I created, but the idea is not mine. Okay, so I just Googled that somewhere, and fortunately I cannot find that precious resource anymore. But that was the idea. Pretend to be the foreigners. Okay, you are in Russian, Ukraine, this is how you pronounce it. Or maybe with Italians, it would be vorresti venire con Valeria Verona, right? And that would, again, set this difference, not also with V sound, but also with R, with Rs. Because in Italian, that would be vorresti, right? Hopefully I pronounced that well. So yeah, this is just a small activity. And again, thinking about the minimal pairs that your learners struggle with, perhaps it would be just a good idea to try it out. And I'm pretty sure that business people, just as any other people of any other type of English they learn, they like to have a little bit of fun. They like to, you know, kind of have a kind of like very easy breezy activity and have their coffee in their coffee pot and just, you know, have this little mouth fitness. I mentioned that diphthong before, and the reason is that you would go and say Cole chose ona home. In the cases of the languages that, you know, the speakers of the languages that I deal with. And then again, there are not right now, there are many videos on how you can physically improve this O sound, right? And again, I just decided to go for some sort of tongue twisters and check. So that would be a kind of maybe a test of O diphthong, or maybe an extra practice with O, because there is don't go home alone, or Cole chose an owner occupied. And then again, here we have owner occupied. So that would ideally set the contrast between O and O, right? So, and if we notice a problem here, we may say, okay, now we need to continue practicing this difference, right? To make them not just aware, but practice physically. Again, I would quote inside Adrian Underhill, who said, look, pronunciation is all about physicality. And when the more you use your muscles over here, the more you fitness, the better work you do, right, with your pronunciation. Yeah, Teresa, do your students have any issues with O's?
Yes, definitely. Again, like we were talking about with the lack of diphthongs in Spanish. They do say kind of Spanish has 5 pure vowels, and then they do lengthen a couple of them. But O is one of the ones that just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a problem for them. And it's really interesting that the kind of this muscle memory sort of thing, because I always think about what is it about pronunciation that means students improve, like an A1 speaker to even to like a B1, a B2 speaker. The difference in their pronunciation it's really noticeable, and I think it is just this muscle memory of constantly getting the mouth in the right position and it becoming much more second nature when they're speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again, as Underhill said, was something about automizing. So when where the babies were kind of get the sound automized, and when you're in the language classroom, you kind of have to, it's like, I don't know, wearing a different dress, or maybe, you know, you were walking along the street and then suddenly you were swimming. So you kind of have to completely change that. And for some people, it's pretty difficult, especially for adults, because I really see them, you know, vulnerable and very sensitive. And that also happens because they're so hard on themselves. They're so critical. And surely just giving this very little help, and, you know, maybe with a bit of joking, a bit of, you know, lightedness, they might just get into this mindset that, look, okay, this is not a problem. Oh yeah, I should also mention that many adults would say, oh, okay, I did not have any pronunciation classes when I was a kid. There's nothing I can do. So a lot of people would just give up, not just halfway, but just at the very beginning, they would just say, you know what, let's practice pronunciation. But I know that I'm not improving. Like right now, I swear I'll not improve. So I think that this little kind of activities, they actually help them to, you know, like, no, you're not, you're mistaken. Let's try to do that. And of course, it's very rewarding when you actually see that okay, you give a piece of advice on the way, maybe even show them the sound. Like I would say in Italian, there is no h sound. So everything becomes eat and ought and aus and and etc. Which, if you're not living in Italy and not talking to Italians who speak English, you will not get it. So interpretability level is quite low. So you would literally use your body and say what and how many, etc. Right? So yeah, and some people would feel, of course, embarrassed, but when you're in the classroom, I feel that this is a very safe space where you can, experiment and improve and do that. Last year, I happened to work with many coaches, so with many people who would somehow combine psychology, psychotherapy, and counseling, I suppose. And this is where the O sound is on repeat, because coach is coach, only coachable coachees. Again, is it a coach or coachee, right? That's the question. So it's not very business related, but it's definitely work related vocabulary that might just, and then what do you think about coaching? Have you had any coaching experience? So, and yeah, because sometimes coach also can become a couch. So now the question is if you're on the couch and if you're a coach as well. So this is the O's. I hope that, again, it will give you some kind of an idea what you can already maybe apply in your classroom, and maybe, think of some extension of these tongue twisters, or to say, yes, tongue twisters, mouth fitness. Now, a big question that we actually kind of brought it up before. So what do you think could be a problem here?
Cha-cha-cha.
Yeah, this is a cha-cha-cha. This is a cha-cha-cha thing. I was surprised how many people actually dance in Italy. So just in general. And surely everybody knows cha-cha-cha. And I was super impressed that everybody can say cha-cha-cha. But when you point at the word structure, so yeah, so I kind of had to just tell them, look, this is URE, just let's treat it as cha cha cha, and this is cha chow. This is a very natural sound for them. So and I know, I probably think that from cha 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 is just easy to get to schwa sound. So from cha to cha a little bit, maybe not very strong. And definitely when the people say structure and prefix cha, they start making more sense. And it works. It's a little bit, teachers also feel a little bit more revealed, especially when we talk about the word signature, which is quite a popular word in business, a very common word in business context, right? Or expenditure, or even in case of Japan, prefecture, right? So yeah, this is definitely a cha-cha-cha sound. So I would just explain that with cha-cha-cha, because surely there are many people who are not aware of transcription. In Russian, Ukraine, we're very much aware. This is probably from the class number one, from the grade, from the form, the first form, the first grade. You don't know how to spell in English, but you already know that you should put T and then this little thingy, and then and then this sound, which I don't know. I couldn't do that. I couldn't draw that one. It took me years to draw that one. But people, very aware. It was very strange that Italians are not very aware how to read transcription, how to look it up in the dictionary, and what to do. I'm pretty sure that now in Russian Ukraine, this is almost not taught anymore. So, which I think raising awareness is always a thing, and it is always an important thing that should be taking place in the classroom. Yeah, okay. Is there any cha-cha problem with the Spaniards?
Yeah, definitely. The structure might.
Yeah.
You do each individual syllable in Spanish.
Right.
And nature.
Nature, future, right? Yeah. That's quite natural. That's quite natural for them. Okay, one more question. What do you think here could be? What is being fitness? What is being Oh, oops. What is fitness here, if anything?
Possibly this and
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
please finish this release,
yeah.
maybe.
That's a very good guess. Yeah, yeah, but it's definitely very much applicable. Very much. Also, perhaps again, stress syllables on stress. Please finish this release, or maybe you can teach also logical stress. Let's finish these release, right? Or definitely not stressing. Russians really love stressing prepositions or pronouns, so it sits on the beach. Yes, my original idea was practicing the length of the vowel. Again, we know what a pain is with beach. So this is something, yeah, to and again, I would probably use my hands to just say longer, nicer, because beach is actually is something relaxing. Come on, you need just to prolong this effect of the beach, right? Why make it shorter? No need. And again, I tried to come up with something maybe work related. A lot of people say Excel, but nobody really knows the word spreadsheet for some reason. Here's the word. Or maybe people know the word numbers, but they know nothing about figures. And again, trainer, trainee, right? So that might be also a kind of a vocabulary work. And again, I'm pretty sure that this thing can be extended, elaborated, and you can definitely come up with something, even more specific and maybe, for people who are studying medicine, or for people who are who have some legal English classes. There might be a lot of fun to think about here. Another thing that it's very hard to teach my Italian students. Again, this is also an issue with Russians and Ukrainians, but Russians and Ukrainians are it's easier to teach them this particular thing. And here, I don't want to focus on the sounds, but I want to focus on something different. So these are 2 days of the week that are very commonly confused in the Italian language, because again, remember that there is no H sound in Italian. So when I kind of eliminate this H, I see Tuesday and then I see Thursday, right? So very often I would fail completely to schedule a lesson with my students just because of Tuesday and Thursday, right? So at some point I was like, okay, that's it. I need to do something about it. And people are completely aware what day is Tuesday and what day is Thursday. They're completely aware, but they just can't pronounce that. So my question is, do you have any suggestions how to make them aware of this pronunciation and make them pronounce them differently, separately?
I think of the Friends episode where Joey goes Monday 1 day, Tuesday 2 day, Wednesday 1 day.
Exactly, right? So for some reason, I was thinking also about this, the number of the days. And since in Europe, we're using, we kind of think that Monday is the first working day. I just decided to follow that pattern. And I also started thinking like, well, actually what I'm thinking is not completely crazy, because, when you think about New York accent, it gets a little bit like news. Please correct me if I'm wrong. People who live in New York. So I just came up with this Tuesday, because this is the second day of the week, right? And also Thursday. And when people said Thursday, you're almost there of putting your tongue in there and say Thursday. You're almost there. But at least when people say Thursday, at least I understand which day we're having a class with. So again, I still remember how one of my students who work in a very big energy company, she looked at this and she was at first she was very confused. She meditated a little bit. She's from Sicily, and they, they almost have no English classes there. They struggle, and then now she's having this very important role, so her English should be very much interpretable. And when she looks at this slide and she says, "Oh my God, you've changed my life." Now I understand everything. Now I understand how to absolutely separate these two words. And I thought, hooray, yes. Maybe this idea is like not fully elaborated. There is always something, to improve. But once the students kind of, get this little insights that, okay, Tuesday, okay, Tuesday, Thursday, it's more understandable. It's not Thursday anymore. So it becomes something different, which may not be perfect, which may not still be Thursday because it's th and also So it's double work. It's a hard job with Thursday. But once they get into Thursday, it's a little bit better. Well, at least for listening when you speak on the phone, you schedule a class and you hear Thursday. And I'm like, yes. So that's the day that we mean. Please, dear Hubbers, if you can come up with any other ideas how to make Tuesday and Thursday, please leave your comments. Get back to me. Let's think about it. Let's I don't know, create maybe some kind of activity with Tuesday and Thursday and just make our students happy and comprehensible and also interpretable, right? Yeah. Okay. So this is just something that I would like to share with you that, my personal discoveries on pronunciation, they're not over. And there are way more sounds and more prosodic things and patterns and intonation patterns to work with my students. And this is just something that I am constantly elaborating on. And definitely my next sounds that I'm going to work with and create something like a model, like a system, would be these sounds, because they're, one of the most complicated ones. And again, we don't have these sounds. Most of the sounds we don't have, not in Russian, nor in Ukrainian or Japanese or Italian. So I just wanted to give you a very little hint, or maybe something to work on. Maybe we could work collaboratively. And again, you're very welcome to leave your comments and just maybe also suggest, maybe we could create some kind of collaborative power pronunciation bank of activities where, everybody's happy. Teresa, do you have any kind of, maybe suggestions about the sounds? How are they difficult sounds for Spaniards?
Well, so interestingly, one of my friends, when she did the diploma, you have to do, there's a whole unit on phonology and you have to do a presentation. And she did choose the sounds because she felt that was an issue for the Spanish speakers. Personally, I think in terms of intelligibility, the two sounds, they don't tend to affect intelligibility because of the context and things. But it can definitely help students to improve or to raise their awareness of those sounds.
That's what I was thinking, that actually maybe when you say I'm thinking that, maybe it's kind of still understandable what you're trying to say, and that you're not actually like Titanic going down. So yeah, that's why I choose something that might be not so elaborated, because also there are so many materials on how to work on this particularly. And we just had so many classes and so many materials on when I was at school, when I was at the university. There was an issue, the tongue between the teeth all the time, and it was quite a hard work. And a lot of people, I'm pretty sure that they don't have very nice memories about these classes. So that's why I thought, like, okay, I need to think about it in a kind of maybe at length and in details. Yes, I've got some final thoughts and a funny picture, hopefully. So sometimes you can't really exercise and do squats in front of the people, but guess what? I still know that many people use masks, this pandemic situation. And perhaps when you do groceries, you could, just wear the mask and practice some sounds, do some fitness. And I encourage my students to do that because, nobody can see you anyway. So go on and practice. And yeah, just the very last thing to say is that when you work, with pronunciation, first, it's really important to see what your students lack. And again, I go with the SWOT model just because I fancied it so much. Work on their issues regularly because, as you know, on the regular basis, we just discussed that today, that there is so much of this memory that people get automatized, the sounds get automatized, and the mouths, just like our muscles, they get used to this kind of load. Optimize their routine by personalization, because all this, this is spreadsheets and coaching, they kind of feel this kind of human touch that is just not Peter Piper, some kind of Peter, some kind of Piper, but it's something about that they work with. Maybe it's either spreadsheets or coaching. And track their progress by recording. Because, once you can make them hear what they say at stage 1, and then after some time, after some practice, stage 2, they can tell the difference. And this is where they feel how much they progress. Yeah, another thing is just tell them that they are doing great, because so many people keep forgetting. They keep remembering only the failures, but they never remember how much of success. And even if it is success, it's still success that they make, and they can, just go on and on with it. Yes, thank you very much. This is further reading. If you teach different students of different native languages, I found that actually this TEDx are very useful just to understand what kind of accent you're dealing with. So maybe, on TEDx, you can hear different accents, Italian and Spanish and Mexican and et cetera, et cetera. So once you wonder, maybe you were given a group of French, once you wonder how French pronounce certain words, or just build their discourse, just get on TEDx Paris, or I don't know, Bordeaux, and you will have some speakers who will kind of give you an idea of the speakers. Just a few things. Again, there is Adrian Underhill and Yoshida on the list. I hope you're going to really like their, little tips, because they're quite useful. Thanks again. Thank you very much.
That was great. Thank you so much, Olga. Yeah, and if anybody wants to share any more of their tongue twisters, I think I've got a couple maybe with the sh and ch sound, so I'll add them, and it would be great, like Olga said, to create a bank, and we can use the comments as a starting point, and then if anybody wants to wait,
that would be lovely.
Definitely. One thing that I loved in your presentation, you talked about kind of creating a safe space for students, and I think that's really important. Like you were talking before about the discomfort that students can feel, particularly, well, I don't want to say particularly because they're high-powered managers and things like that, but kind of showing your vulnerability, it can be quite difficult. There was a really interesting chat. Harry Waters was chatting to the guy, I can't remember his name, Sensations English, Adam Scott. We're talking about how, with the online classroom, you can get much more up close and personal in terms of pronunciation, because you can really get people to kind of, or as a teacher, if you feel comfortable, you can really kind of bring yourself closer to the camera. And I think as well, getting people to doing some drilling when people's mics are off, that space to practice as well before doing kind of individual drilling, or choral drilling on Zoom is just a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, I also feel like, when the teacher is kind of willing, I know that there are some teachers who would think like, oh no, this is a little bit embarrassing. I just say, repeat after me. But when you actually do that with them, they just feel this kind of safety, like, okay, if the teacher does it, maybe sometimes you make a mistake, or maybe you stress something in a different way, and they're like, oh, okay, Okay, or maybe sometimes, you start wondering, I mean, English is not my first language. So sometimes I always wonder, where does the stress go, right? And when you check this pronunciation just with them and saying like, oh, look, guys, this is what we have. Oh, it's actually this way and not that way. There is a lot of discovery, and they also feel comfortable, feel that, oh, okay, just a teacher is just a human being, and yeah, doesn't necessarily have to be this accent pro and expert. So
very true, very true. Excellent. Well, yep. Thank you for everyone who's been watching us live. If you're watching on catch up, leave us a little thumbs up or post a little hello. I know that the views do tend to jump up in the afternoon and later in the week, so that's great. We're pleased to be providing webinars that people are interested in. This for me was great. I love phonology. I love talking about phonology. So thank you again so much, Olga, for coming along this morning.
thank you guys. Thank you so much.